The center position each and every year is clearly the toughest position by far. You have a few guys here that could get close to that 50 mark. One exceeded this year in Dane Gagai, but he has never been a 50 plus scorer in the past. There's a few of these guys in there that a lot of you guys may take a punt on. They're definitely going to be point of difference players, and they could definitely make or break the start of your season. A few of these guys could go 50 plus, and if a lot of us out there, the majority of people are going to be going for some of the cheaper guys or potentially a mid-ranger in a Dean Mariner, and they happen to flop or get, 15 to 25 is a lot of the time what the center seems to start with. They can get you a sort of a 12 in 1 week and then a 30 the next. And if you have a guy that goes pretty hot to begin the season, you think Kevin Graham and what he did last year, and if you're game enough to go for one of those guys in the first few rounds, then this video is for you. Otherwise, what we really need to be doing with this video is learning a lot about the gun center players, because very, very likely 3, 4, 5 of these guys will drop a decent amount of value, anywhere between 50 and 100k over the first sort of 6 weeks of the season. And it gives us an opportunity, once we've built some of our team value, to actually trade a few of these guys into our side. So let's get into the Word document now. So it's usually a position, as we said, that you don't really want to invest too much in early. Even if a few of these guys maybe lose 50 or 100k, are they in a team that's absolutely firing? And for the most part, that's what you want to be looking at with the centers. And in most cases, the wing fullback position as well, is grabbing guys that are in plenty of form, obviously themselves, but the team as well. And usually they can run off the back of that and score plenty of good points. So let's get into these guys here. And Dane Gagai is the clear top man, a 54.5 average. So his numbers were absolutely out of this world last season, outdoing his 2022 average by 16 points and his 2021 average by 8 points there. So just wild that he could produce that. I personally think you let him go for a while and check back in closer to Origin, where he's very, very unlikely to play now that he got dropped last year. He only scored 3 tries all year. That's actually wild for someone that averaged 54.5. He did have Dom Young on his outside, so it's likely to be Jenkins at this stage. And at this stage of his career, he's not the quality of player that Dom Young is, and can't stream away down the touchline and sort of send it back into Gagai to move it on to someone else, because he obviously didn't score many tries. But even just that getting it onto him and him streaming down and scoring himself, getting those try assists, getting those line break assists that Gagai was able to provide there. And obviously the threat down that right-hand side as well. So very, very interesting. There could be some upside based on the fact that he only scored 3 tries, but I very much doubt it. And keep him in your sights for another time. Isaac Tungo there, 678k. The average is 49.3. So very, very highly likely he's just going to be a top 3 center again. He's a decent amount cheaper than Gagai there at 70k there, which is cool. Who's not going to play Origin, super relevant at some point in a great team for sure, which is good. And he did score 10 tries in the 14 games, and he had a little bit of a stretch there before he got injured, where he was averaging well into the high 50-60 mark, and was that gun for that few weeks before he got injured. So a frustrating one for Isaac, but again, he'll be up there, as I said. So look at him if he potentially, the Panthers struggle a little bit and then they get into some form for sure. Herbie Farnworth moves to the Dolphins now, 646k. He's moving from a Broncos slightly better side, obviously, than what the Dolphins are at this stage, but they'll be improving week in, week out, I imagine, this year, given they've recruited well and they've got a year under their belt now. He's going to be a focal point in their attack at the Dolphins, so that could be of some relevance too, but it also means they'll likely defend him, will look to defend him a little bit more and have less sort of scary options coming out the back. Like you got the hammer there, comparing that to Reece Walsh. Obviously there you got Ezra Mam, and you're comparing that to a Sean O'Sullivan or something like that. So there's still some big differences at that. So they will be able to target their defense a little bit more in Farnworth, but he may get a little bit more ball and potentially some more meters gained, some tackle breaks, some offloads and the like there. So you'd imagine it'll be fairly similar to this average. I've got him at about a 45 average this year, with his great running sort of base game there. Joey Manu, obviously, is an interesting one each and every year. I do end up with him at some point after about the first 6 to 8 weeks. And with his 44 average at center, I'm happy to just let him through the keeper, to be honest with you. Very keen if he gets into the fullback slot, but we always know that one. He has a nice duel there. I just think you leave him for the beginning of the season with a 46.5 average at what he's priced at. I think you can, just let him go through and he'll be one of those guys that we look to at some point of the season. And if he plays 5/8 again, he actually didn't average too much more than the 46.5. I think it was about the 47 mark at 6 there with a couple of good games, but some low ones at that. It does miss a lot of tackles. So if the Roosters aren't firing, it's one of those guys that you do worry about him scoring some tries, and a lot of time that he was kind of the only guy that would just sneak a try or so for him. So we'll see what happens with the Roosters this year. Garrick, another dual position guy, centre in the wing fullback, 639k, the average of 46.5 as well. So obviously the duel's great. He had one big 100 game at centre, so if he plays centre there, the other games are pretty low, to be honest with you there, so you don't want to look at that too much. And they also had a really, really good end of the season, which Garrick wasn't a part of, I don't believe. So I think avoiding at both positions, at centre or wing at the moment, and with Collar being the backup fullback likely for now. If Manly are hot, then we will get Garrick at some point. Actually, I do believe he played most of the end of the season. Anyway, potentially at some point he could be an option, but I think he has to be one of those guys to drop down in price as well. Val Holmes, there's a little bit more interest from my end. I won't be starting with a gun centre, but for those that are interested in starting with a gun centre, I think Val Holmes is one of those guys that you could do with. So the Cowboys had a really slow start last year, and Holmes was still consistent, averaging 45. So across that time, they were shocking. He then had a really big stretch when they were going well. Obviously, the goal kicking, him scoring tries, setting him up as well, was really, really cool. But with Holmes there, it's an interesting one as to what you do with him, because you still end up at a 46, even having a decent start in a poor team. So you can't just say, it was all based on how the Cowboys play really poor. But then obviously having that big stretch and then going slower from there. So do you grab him now or do you look at it a little bit later than this year? So that's the big question mark here. Let's just go through their footy stats for those top 6 guys there. And Gags, and what you're going to see with all of the centers guys is some inconsistencies for sure. Gags was very much one of those guys that was the consistent guy here. 35, a 27, a 24, and a 41. Really his lowest scores in the first 16 rounds. So he was awesome at that. The 3 tries is just wild. So look at Gagai as a really good option from there. Isaac Tungo, as we spoke about, sort of started a little bit slow and then had stretches in there where he dominated the 82 and the 59. When he scored doubles, he went really well. Obviously a 55, a 77, and 97 in there, and finished with the 37 there in that one round that he came back for, ready for final. So one of those guys that I think he can find a little bit more consistency as well. His tackle numbers are fairly low, and they did increase over that time from round 16 to round 20, and that's when he had his best scores of the year and kind of had some stretches in there with 5 tackles, 9 tackles, and 11 in round 1. So if you can get that up around that 15 or so mark without missing too many, he did tackle more but miss more during that middle period, so it probably doesn't matter either way, unless he can fix up the missed tackles when he's making more. But Isaac, definitely a fun one. Herbie Farnworth, a 646 there. So he's probably one of the most consistent guys in this position. He had 3 35s in a row to show some consistency there, and that included 2 tries. So he's one of those guys that doesn't have the boom games, which guys like Holmes and Tungo and obviously Gagai can have. So that's something to note with him. He'll be fairly consistent all year, but a buy in round 3, it's a little bit frustrating. Joey Manu, we know what he can do. He's got so many different positions there. So fullback is what we want. If you have a look at him at fullback in general, when he gets an opportunity there, he averages 57.8. So let's wait until he gets that and go from there. Garrick, again, fairly inconsistent compared, which is majority of people in this position. Had the 104, has 10s, and obviously 27 minutes, has 31s, have 27s. We need to work out where he's going to be positionally. Is he going to be a centre or is he going to be a winger? And then Val Holmes, that consistency at the start. A little bit slow up and down up until Origin, and he still made Origin obviously, and then had a bunch of great games there, and then cooked himself when he got the sin bin, unfortunately. So one of those guys that's I think he can go better than that for sure, and the consistency is very helpful at that. So Stephen Crichton's the next one on the list there. Average of 38 at fullback in a better team, being the Panthers there in the 5 games that he's played only. So it's very, very small sample size. That's where he's averaged at, and where he's priced at right now is 5 points above. Sorry, more than that actually, given he got the increase. So he's priced at 45, so 7 points above. So they gave him a little bump considering he was going to be moving from centre to wing fullback, to fullback I should say. So 7 points above what he averages at fullback in a better team. That's the scary thing for me, in my opinion. Is he going to be more than a 45 guy? Is he going to be a 50 guy? I just don't see it happening. There's obviously some potential there. He's going to get the jewel when he is named at fullback. If he's not named at fullback, then we don't want to touch him anyway. I just don't see the growth personally. And let's have a look at his sort of counting stats there. At centre, he has some low scores. He's got 8 with a try last year. This is obviously isn't going to happen at fullback. And, he probably didn't score as many tries as he would have thought. He did well in the back end, but, it still isn't him jumping off the page at a 52 or 49, with a single try, 49 with a double, 53 with a try there. Obviously, the last game of the year, 92, probably cooks some of his value, to be honest with you there. And the fullback counting stats, as we said, includes a 66 back in 2021 when he played that position. In his last game, he was 35, 30, 39, and 23. He's obviously a slightly different player than that of 2021. That's 3 years ago, or will be by the time the season starts. But even if he does gain the 7 points in value from 38 to 45, that's where his break even is at. I just don't see him being worth it. But I know other people will say otherwise. Campbell Graham, average 50, over 50 to begin the year he did there, and he's priced at 44. So he ended up having a pretty tough sternum injury. So if the Bunnies start well again, you could see the same. So he's one of those guys that people started with last year that did great. He's very inconsistent, a lot of money for a centre though. So yeah, there's obviously the couple of caveats as always. But 66, a 20, a 66, 34, just the up and down nature of that. 58, 78 there. 36, 28, 74 before he got injured there and started having low ones just before Origin, which he was a chance of getting picked for. He came back and had some decent games there in the 40s, a 64 there, but for the most part, he was playing injured, and so he's definitely a chance to go higher than that. If you look at his 2022 stats, he's a 43.6 average there, which is pretty well where he is at currently, and then 40 in 2021. So it's very hard to project him to be a 50 guy for the entirety of the year. So at that's saying those numbers now, it's probably worth just leaving him out of your side for those reasons. Matt Timoko, consistent for all but 2 games with his base, which was interesting. He had 2 really low games, which we'll show in a sec. He was dominant in a fairly average, attacking team. I just don't feel like he has the upside in a team that's going to go a little bit worse, likely. 43.8 the average. So yeah, it's a lot of bicky, a lot of money to spend on him there. You can see those 2 games are 16 to 15, but for the most part, other than that, the 25 to kick things off for the year, and then he was really, really rock solid. So yeah, if you're looking for a guy that's just going to hit 40s and not really go up or down in price, then it's probably Timoko. You get him all the way to round 10, you get him for round 13 and 16. So Raiders have the good buy for that, but yeah, not for me on that one. Zach Lomax, 591k, average of 43. So very, very consistent goal-kicking centre. The big thing for him is if he ends up in the fullback slot, then I have some interest, and a lot of people will. But if he doesn't, then yeah, it's not something we want to really look at, to be honest with you there. They've got him in there as playing centre all year. He did move to fullback at certain stages in games through this period here. He also had that couple of try cracking game at centre with a 91. He did get a 70 and a 60 in that time, and sort of has his 59 or 51. He has some games above that, but he also has some low ones with a 9 in round 4, and he was kind of really struggling across those first few games, even with goal kicking and stuff like that. He did struggle at the beginning of the year and kind of turned things around and came into a big deal of form. But for Lomax, we need him at the fullback slot for him to have any interest in our sides. Bradman Best there at 589, the 42.8 average, had a cracking year. I just don't see much upside on that though, because he had plenty of tries and plenty of assists there. So if you look at Bradman's year, it's kind of the tries came obviously a lot more in the back end. The assists were a bit through the start. So he had 3 try assists in one game to get 47 points. Fairly consistent, obviously some 20s games in there, some 50 plus, and the 94. But for the most part, he's not one of those guys that are going to win or lose you this fantasy game. at 589k. I just don't see it being worth it for your sides. Got a few to go, guys. Will Penasini there. 582k, 42.3 is the average. For him, he limped into the end of season. Along with the Eels, I owned him from near halfway onwards. They sort of split both sides of their attack, left and right, especially with Dylan Brown coming back. I see there's some small upside if Eels are on, but at this stage, I'll be avoiding him. Yes, so Penasini there. You see some good scores throughout the beginning of the year. Was able to make a little bit of cash and get up to 648k, and then was sort of up and down towards the end of the season, finishing at around that 500k mark, which was frustrating for sure. And just lots of low scores, 16 and 18 in there, 25 or 35, some 40s and 50s, but the upside isn't really there. Just that 70 in round 7 he ended up with. I think I brought in Dylan Brown instead that week, but yeah, it is what it is. He's going to be there and thereabouts, obviously with a team that should be better, but does have Penrith in round 2, so that kind of scares me away, that's for sure. Brian Kelly, the next man on the list, there's 2 to go. For him, there's only 6 tries, so potentially shows a small amount of upside for him, a centre that is very damaging ball runner. I just think you avoid at the price. He's always around this kind of scoring here. If you look to last year, 31 with some injury games. He had 2021, he averaged 37. So it's his best year of his career. Just don't see much improvement from him. And he's going to be an up and down sort of scorer without the tremendous upside. A 67 and a 65 are his 2 big scores for the year there. And then he finished things off with Hammer. And he's the one I missed last year, obviously. Didn't think he'd go too well because the Dolphins wouldn't be as well. But we know the move to the fullback position and the price he was at was very much worth it. That's where the Stephen Crichton call is a bit of a worry, given he's very well expensive. I just don't really see the upside here with Hammer at this stage. With how many tries he scored and the Dolphins being decent last year already. He's dual, he's good playing fullback, but he has Origin as well. So yeah, a few too many things on the negative list, I think, for Hammer at this stage. But you look at all those tries. He did not score a try for the first 6 rounds, which absolutely killed myself and the money-making potential there. Then he went to 32, 28, 36, 31, 41, and 40 in the next bunch of games. So definitely slowed down. And then through the back end of the year, registered a lot of 20s and 30s as well. So the worry with him is that he will be somewhere around that 30 in a lot of rounds and then up in towards the 50. So he'll probably end up around this 41 average for the entirety of the season. In my opinion, he could play some centre games as well. So there's a few things there to note for sure with Hammer. So we go to the best options for points and value. So all these guys will be relevant at some point. I think we'll have, probably 4 or 5 of these guys across the season. But Dane Gagai, whether it's between centre or the wing fullback. Dane Gagai, I think he'll be a 50 guy this year. Tungo for points as well, I think he'll be number 2. And then Val Holmes, depending on how many games Manu plays at centre compared to fullback. Holmes, I think, next has that bit of boom potential and that solid consistency as well if the Cowboys do well. Manu, up and down. He's always going to be in that 40s and thereabouts. Garrick, I think there's a little bit of value potentially in him if the Manly boys fire. And if Tom's around, he seems to score really well. And then Campbell Graham, definitely some value at points of the season if the Rabbitohs are going well. That's the question mark there with the Bunnies and how they play there. So that's the centre. Guns video, guys. We'll get the mid-tier guys and the cheapies out later. I've obviously got the timestamps in there if you want to just come in and check things out. But thanks for being here on this one. And I look forward to going through the wing fullbacks in the next one.